Freedom of speech. It's under attack right now. Controlling the media, cracking down on protests, limiting free speech are all tenets of fascism. They're all critical tools in the rise of an authoritarian dictator. One of the ways that we're already seeing the Trump administration trying to suppress free speech is by controlling the press pool. About a month ago, the White House decided that they would have the complete say over who had access to the White House press secretary and the president. One of the things that they did during that meeting was boot out the AP press, which is one of the most acclaimed and most accurate news sources that had access to the White House and to the president. The White House decided they just didn't want to have the AP press in there anymore. Now, when you kick out one of the most respected news sources and journalists, what you're really doing is sending a message to all of the other journalists that even the people at the top can be booted if they don't like what's being said. Now, the AP press has since brought a lawsuit, and they have been restored access to the White House press secretary and to the president. But it is chilling to know that it was that easy for them to, in the first place, just to get booted. So one of the ways that they're trying to control what is being said is by controlling who is allowed into the press pool and what kinds of questions are being asked. Let's take a look.
The pool, if you don't know this, dates back to the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It solves a very simple physics problem that, if not solved, creates a very real information problem. The physics problem is this: how can reporters cover the president in small spaces and on a round-the-clock basis? You can't have 50 or 100 accredited White House reporters do this. Hence the pool, composed of a small number of wire service, radio, magazine, newspaper, and later TV correspondents. The pool assignments are done on a rotating basis, which until this week was handled by the White House Correspondents Association. Now, the Trump White House will assign 1 or 2 slots in the pool.
For decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore.
Okay, so the very first thing that they're attempting to do is to kick out the journalists that they don't like, who are going to report on things that they deem to be unfavorable. Now, the next thing that they want to do is they want to populate that press pool and access to the White House and the president with many more far-right leaning journalists and commentators. Now, one of the things that they've already done is that they have not only opened up their doors to more right-leaning journalists, but they've put a lot of right-leaning journalists in positions of power in the executive branch. Let's take a look.
So, Dana, you actually led into the final question that we're going to talk about, which is, it's not just loyalists, it's people who are the kind of luminaries, such as it is, of the right-wing media information bubble. We have Musk, we have Hegseth, we have Bongino, we have others. Is Trump a captive of that infosphere, or is he the mastermind of it? And please discuss.
This is a chicken and egg problem, I believe we have here. So it's very hard to tell which one is influencing the other. I think there are, at last count, something like 20 Fox News personalities now running the government of the United States of America.
Did you hear they said 20 news personalities from Fox News, which is a far right-leaning sort of news outlet? They have now been put into positions of power in the West Wing.
And it's not clear whether Trump is a victim of this or the perpetrator of this. And in that sense, it doesn't really matter because, you know, as I was saying a moment ago, the government is now being run based on a whole series of false premises.
I think that at this point in time, it's you know, there very much is a feedback loop between Trump and the rest of the right-wing universe. But I think that it is underappreciated the extent to which that universe is what propelled Trump to his position in the first place.
So they go on to say, this is a Washington Post opinion piece, and they go on to say that back before Trump was elected the first time, he started listening to right-wing media outlets, and then he started parroting back to his listeners and to the potential voters the memes and the talking points that he was hearing on the right. And so when he would say those things and it sounded right to them because it was consistent with what they had been hearing on these echo chambers, these right-wing echo chambers. So he actually used their own rhetoric to parrot that back to them so that when he spoke, they believed he was speaking the truth because he was speaking the things that they were already hearing. So one of the other ways that Trump has been trying to silence legacy media is he's been throwing out lawsuits, and really quite bogus lawsuits, that then these legacy media, instead of fighting, even though they likely would win, they have just been throwing money at Trump because they're realizing that it's easier and cheaper to throw money at him than it is to fight him and then risk the potential down the road consequences of him deciding that they are no longer valuable, that he can throw them out, that he can withdraw their licenses, that he can go after them in a number of ways. So that is what Trump is trying to do with the media right now. Let's take a look.
Let me point out something to you, and I hope people pay attention to this. A month or two ago, ABC television settled a lawsuit with Trump. I think it was for $15 million. He sued them for somebody having said something about it.
So Donald Trump sued them for defamation, but it was a lawsuit that they could not possibly have won. But instead of fighting the lawsuit, they just gave a crap ton of money to him. They just capitulated.
In the settlement, ABC agreeing to donate $15 million to Trump's presidential library, pay $1 million to his legal team, and add a statement to their article on the interview reading, ABC News and George Stephanopoulos regret statements regarding President Donald J. Trump made during the interview.
And then just the other day, the Wall Street Journal, I think, reported that Paramount, which is a huge media conglomerate, which among other holdings owns CBS, that Trump was suing 60 Minutes on CBS for how they edited a Kamala Harris interview during the campaign.
You know what? If you want me to, I will sue them. Should I?
Apparently, according to the report, Paramount is considering reaching some agreement with Trump.
If I become president, oh, do they have problems? They're going to have such problems.
I regard that as an incredibly dangerous precedent, both of those, ABC and CBS. Because if you have major media outlets succumbing to pressure from the Trump administration, what that will tell anybody is that the First Amendment in our country, which says, you know what, people have a right to express their own point of view. Yeah, networks are wrong all of the time. They're wrong about me, wrong about Trump. But if you use the power of government to intimidate networks, they're not going to do the big stories. They're not going to do the investigations. Why should they go out on a limb and tell you something if they're afraid about being sued by the Trump administration?
So the legacy media has just been rolling over and letting Trump do what he's going to do. One of the other things that Trump has been doing, which is really horrifying and terrifying if you think about it, is that he actually went last week to the Department of Justice to give a speech. Presidents don't typically do that. If they show up at the Department of Justice at all, it's usually just to kind of give them like kudos and hey, thanks for the work that you're doing. But he actually went and he gave a speech in which he implied heavily that the Department of Justice should prosecute media outlets that he doesn't like. Let's take a look.
Trump just pulled the insane move of delivering a politically charged speech at the Department of Justice, which would already be grossly inappropriate unto itself. Presidents generally respect the line drawn between their office and the DOJ, and they don't cross it, much less enter the DOJ to talk directly to the prosecutors about their political priorities. But not only did Trump cross that line, he blew so far past it, it wasn't visible in the rearview mirror. Here are a few moments that put on full display the absurdity of this speech that was delivered.
And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do
Illegal.
is illegal.
Okay, I don't want to mince words about what's happening here. Trump is standing in front of the nation's prosecutors at the DOJ, and he is signaling to them, in no uncertain terms, that his priority is the imaginary illegality of TV networks that commit the crime of, you ready for this? Saying critical things about him. And I want to be clear, this is what fascism looks like. And I understand that word may have lost its meaning because it's been repeated so much, but suppressing speech that is critical of the leader of a country is quite literally fascist behavior.
So Trump has literally walked into the Department of Justice and told them to prosecute the illegal media, and they're illegal because they said something he doesn't like. It's horrifying. One of the other things that Trump has been doing is controlling the narrative. He's been doing this primarily, obviously he's saying it himself too, but also he's controlling the narrative by spinning the stories using his press secretary. Let's take a look at some of the untruths that she has been telling lately.
Will those flights to El Salvador continue while this case is being appealed?
We don't have any flights planned specifically, but we will continue with the mass deportations. And I would just like to point out that the judge in this case is essentially trying to say that the president doesn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our American soil.
Without due process.
That is an egregious abuse of the bench. This judge does not have that authority. It is the opinion of
Yes, he does. Did you hear? In the opinion of this White House.
This White House and of this administration, and that's why we're fighting this in court. And it's very, very clear that this is an activist judge who is trying to usurp the president.
An activist judge? Okay.
President's authority. Under the Alien Enemies Act, the president has this power.
But the Alien Enemies Act has only ever been enacted 3 other times in the United States, and they were all in wartime. We are not at war. We have not declared war or been declared war upon the country.
And that's why this deportation campaign has continued. And this judge, Judge Boasberg, is a Democrat activist. He was appointed by Barack Obama. His wife has donated more than $10,000 to Democrats, and he has consistently shown his disdain for this president and his policies, and it's unacceptable.
You took me right where I wanted to go about the idea that these people are all foreign terrorists, but Judge Boasberg was originally appointed by George W. Bush and then elevated by Barack Obama. It's just...
Oh, yes. Fact checked right in the middle of her speech. It was actually a Republican president that appointed this judge, and he has been doing his job. His job is quite literally to do the checks and balances and to make sure that the executive branch, which would be Donald Trump, does not overstep their legal ability.
I feel like I should clear that up.
Well, let me just say something to that effect, Garrett. 67% of all of the injunctions in this century have come against which president? Donald J. Trump. Let me say that again. 60% of the injunctions by partisan activists in the judicial branch have come against President Donald Trump, and 92% of those have been from Democrat-appointed judges. This is a clear, concerted effort by leftists who don't like this president and are trying to impose or slow down his agenda.
So, given that, do you think it's a good use of Congress's time and the president's political capital to try to impeach and remove a federal judge, which would take 67 votes you're unlikely to get in the Senate?
Well, look, the president has made it clear that he believes this judge in this case should be impeached, and he has also made it clear that he has great respect for the Chief Justice John Roberts, and it's incumbent upon the Supreme Court to rein in these activist judges. These partisan activists are undermining the judicial branch by doing so. We have co-equal branches of government for a reason.
So she stated, we have co-equal branches of the government for the specific reason of checks and balances. And yet, when this particular judge checks and balances the power, then he's what? A Democratic activist that should be impeached? Okay, so clearly what's going on here is that the the White House, press secretary, and the president are trying to control the narrative. Because if you can spin the narrative in such a way that it seems like the one side is clearly wrong and your side is clearly right, then you can really start to kind of get into the minds of people, and it really does limit free speech when you control the narrative in such a way. The other thing that President Trump has been doing is cracking down on protests. Now, protesting is not only very American, but it is protected speech. He has actually threatened to withhold federal funding to colleges who allow protests on their campuses.
As Lisa Rosner reports, the president also posted on social media today that all federal funding will stop for any campus that allows what he calls illegal protests.
Illegal?
From protesters blocking sidewalks to taking over a campus building, Barnard College says it's identifying the disruptors from the past week and will pursue discipline, but it's not clear what that is. It comes almost a year after students at the affiliated Columbia University created a contentious encampment and occupied a building there, leading to multiple arrests. Tuesday, President Trump posted on Truth Social, all federal funding will stop for any school that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks.
Okay, this is horrifying and heinous to threaten legal residents of this country with deportation or getting arrested simply for free speech. It is completely un-American to do so. Now, I don't know about you, but the time in my life when I was the most likely to speak up was actually during college. Because it is in college, at that age, that you start to see the world around you is much bigger than you thought it was. And you start to realize that you have a voice and that you can use your voice to get things done. He is quite literally nipping in the bud the opportunity for young people who are in the stage of life where they want to use their voice to use their voices. Now, there was a student that he referenced, or that was referenced, a protest at Columbia University, and I want to take a look now at a former student who organized that protest, Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested at his home with his 8-month pregnant wife nearby, and moved to an ICE detention center in Louisiana. He was actually arrested in New Jersey, but he was taken and basically disappeared into the system. It took them a couple days, his lawyer and his wife, to find him, and he has been held there for a couple of weeks now. And let's take a look and see what happened there and why this is so dangerous.
Let's turn now to Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian activist who helped lead protests at Columbia University. He was arrested by federal immigration agents, and he's currently being detained in an immigration jail in Louisiana, even though he has a green card and is a legal permanent resident of the United States. You wrote an op-ed last week for Bloomberg called "Columbia Students' Deportation Arrest Should Scare All Americans." Why do you feel that way?
To begin with, if you're a green card holder, you have a constitutional right to free speech the same as a citizen. That's not obvious to everybody, understandably, so let me just say it again. The Supreme Court has held since World War II, so for some 80 years, that if you're a green card holder, you're living here legally, you're a resident, and you're not a citizen, you have the same free speech rights as you and I do. And what happened here is that the administration claims to be using a law that's on the books that says if the Secretary of State determines that your presence in the United States is a threat to our foreign policy interests, you can be deported. Now, that law has never been used, as far as I'm able to determine, to exclude someone from the country, to deport them rather, based solely on their political opinions. They've tried to use it in the past. The Clinton administration even tried to use it to deport people who were being extradited to other countries. But it wasn't because of their opinions. It was because of alleged crimes. So I believe it's clear as a matter of law that it would be unconstitutional to deport someone from the US just because of their political opinions when they're a green card holder, in the same way that it would be clearly unconstitutional to punish me or you for expressing our point of view. This is independent of what we say. It's independent of how lousy our point of view may be or how morally repugnant it may be. That's irrelevant. If it's free speech protected, they can't kick you out of the country for it. And in that sense, a threat to one person's free speech rights is a threat to all of our free speech rights. Because if the government can deport Khalil on this basis, then in principle, they should be able to punish American citizens for otherwise protected free speech.
So the government is saying that Mahmoud Khalil was arrested because he was distributing terrorist propaganda. But what he in fact did was he had political speech against Israel, who is buddy-buddy right now with our president. And even if his speech was awful, even if we would disagree with the things that he would have to say, he has the right to say it. He's a green card holder in the United States, a permanent resident. You can't get kicked out of the country for free speech, or at least you didn't used to get to be able to get kicked out of the country for free speech. We might be living in a different world now. And the really frightening thing is that if somebody with a green card who is a permanent resident here can get kicked out for free speech, then the next people to get kicked out for free speech, those of us using platforms for free speech. Yeah, that's right. There have been some new developments in the Mahmoud Khalil saga, his story. Apparently, he has been moved, or at least been given permission to move to New Jersey. Let's take a listen.
Well, a federal judge has ruled that Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil can challenge the legality of his detention, but says the case should be moved to New Jersey.
All right, Fox 5's Michelle Ross joins us with today's developments. Michelle.
Right. So because Mahmoud was in New Jersey at the time of this, his lawyers were also first went to court that time and filed the paperwork there. So the judge says that's the reason why the case should be held in that state. Now, here's when 30-year-old Khalil was arrested by ICE agents on March 8th in the lobby of his university-owned apartment. The former student was detained over his involvement in pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia's campus. Now, from New York, Khalil was taken to an immigration detention center in New Jersey, then back to New York to be put on a plane to an immigrant facility in Louisiana. The federal government said it moved him to Louisiana because of a lack of beds in detention centers in the New York area and because of a bed bug infestation at a different facility in New Jersey.
A bed bug infestation? Really? Really? We're going with bed bugs?
But of course, Khalil's lawyers argue that he was moved to a southern state because the jurisdiction there is more favorable to the Republican administration. Khalil is currently being held in Louisiana, but it appears he will not be leaving the U.S. anytime soon.
Another way that Trump has been working to limit free speech is by threatening to shut down independent media. Now, the legacy media, as we know, has been just rolling over, and I've been finding it really difficult to watch legacy media or listen to legacy media because I'm starting to wonder about the accuracy and if they have started to self-censor, so that they will only put out news articles that are not going to get them into any trouble. So instead, I've been following a lot of independent media. And a lot of the independent media are starting to put their things out on like YouTube and TikTok. And I'm finding that even the independent media now are getting a little bit concerned about their ability to speak freely. Let's take a look.
All right, I spoke to a couple of lawyers in D.C. who don't represent me. Okay, these are just casual conversations I had with a couple of lawyers in D.C. And they are warning me. They believe, based on what they are hearing, that the Trump administration will come after me. Now, it's not just me. This isn't about, oh, David Pakman. This is about independent creators on the political left. Now, from what I'm being told, it's not going to be, let's frame you for a violent crime or anything like that. The likely playbook, we've been wondering, will they come after us? What I'm told is the likely playbook are the following things: tax audits and scrutiny, social media deplatforming pressure, lawsuits and legal harassment, doxing and harassment campaigns, and investigations into our funding. These are sort of the 5 prongs that these lawyers said they believe if and when the Trump administration turns its attention to independent progressive content creators, they would employ. Here's how these 5 things would work. First of all, you get hit with a tax audit. Doesn't matter if your books are clean as a whistle or as clean as Trump's. They will dig and dig until they either find something or until the process itself becomes the punishment. Audits are expensive, they are time-consuming, they are extraordinarily stressful for the person being targeted. Even if I came out unscathed, the legal and accounting fees and the distractions would take a toll. That's one mechanism.
It is horrifying to think that in this country there are this many legal ways to shut down free speech. It is not illegal to harass independent creators with lawsuits and audits and all kinds of harassment. It's unethical, but it is not illegal.
These lawyers said this is what might be used. Secondly, they will lean on the social media platforms. It won't be directly. It won't be someone from the West Wing calling Twitter or whichever platform and saying, you've got to hurt David Pakman. It'll be you get accused of spreading misinformation or inciting violence, and next thing you know, your accounts are suspended, or they're limited, or YouTube removes your monetization, or Twitter throttles your reach. And these are platforms that are certainly plausibly going to cave to political pressure. As you know, since we are primarily audience funded, if I temporarily lose access to my audience, that could really hinder my ability to keep the show going and to spread the message.
Okay, so what he's saying here is that the social media platforms themselves can become tools for suppressing speech. Now, Elon Musk already owns X. Twitter used to be the place that you would go if you wanted to get in-the-moment information about the people that you follow and news. Ever since Elon Musk bought X, it has just become a right-wing echo chamber. And it is not a place where you can go for necessarily for accurate news anymore. So already by Musk purchasing the entire platform, he has ultimate say over what is spoken and what is not spoken on his platform. Now, in this last round of lawsuits and threats, Meta has also kind of folded under the pressure, and they have also donated a crap ton of money to the Trump administration, or actually to Trump himself. I think it wasn't even through the administration. I think it was into a campaign fund or inauguration fund, which means he can basically use it for anything he wants for any reason, and nobody can even ask questions about it. So Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, are kind of already like, I don't know if we can really count on accurate news there. TikTok is one of the places that does not currently have a lot of American meddling in what's being spoken. Although, I mean, TikTok suppresses quite a lot. They censor a crap ton. But TikTok is on the verge of going away. So one of the things that I think that Trump wants to do is to try to find a buyer for TikTok that is favorable to him. Let's take a look at one of the ways that at some of the people who might purchase TikTok.
The clock is ticking on TikTok, with President Trump's 75-day pause on banning the app set to end within a month. The president seems optimistic, saying he's working with multiple bidders.
Do you think there's going to be a deal on TikTok soon?
There could be. We're dealing with 4 different groups, and a lot of people want it, and it's up to me.
Wait. How is it up to him? Like, the last time I checked, the president had nothing to do with a buyer and a seller making a transaction. So, like, I'm not sure how he figures in, but I don't know. He seems to think that maybe he has some kind of say.
It's not clear exactly who those 4 groups are, but bidders are clamoring for attention. Employer.com CEO Jesse Tinsley, a former firefighter, is leading one high-profile group to buy the social media app. In a recent op-ed for Fox News, Tinsley highlighted how important TikTok is for Main Street, calling it a lifeline for small businesses, adding how it can build a customer base for real people with real dreams building real businesses.
And that really is true. One of the reasons that I don't want to see TikTok go away is because there are so many small businesses that rely on TikTok for their businesses. If TikTok goes away, so does the business, and that would be a shame.
I think American control, whether that's us or another party, I think that's paramount.
Big names like YouTube personality Mr. Beast joining that group bid.
We have an offer ready for you.
They recently said the offer is, quote, north of $30 billion in cash. Another bidder with a vision, real estate billionaire Frank McCourt, leading what he calls the people's bid.
My view is that when ByteDance understands that they can transact without selling the algorithm, I think their view is going to be totally different.
Okay, so he just said that ByteDance, who's the parent company of TikTok, might be willing to sell if they know that they can sell to America the platform and the data, but not the algorithm. Y'all, the algorithm is the magic. The algorithm is what makes TikTok TikTok. So even if he were to buy TikTok without the algorithm, it would be crap. Like, that's the thing that makes TikTok magic. So I don't even know if ByteDance, in fact, I'm pretty sure they have never expressed any interest in selling TikTok with or without the algorithm to anybody in America. So I'm not even sure if these conversations are any kind of valid, because I don't think they want to sell. But anyway, I would love to see TikTok stay in the United States, but I don't know if I don't know if that's going to happen.
Successful, he says TikTok would not use any Chinese technology, instead being run on his nonprofit's platform, allowing users to have more control over their data. Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian has joined that bid. Another offer led by Wyoming wealth management billionaire Reed Rasner, presenting a plan to have U.S. users buy into the platform as founding members.
I mean, that could be kind of cool. Like, I'm not sure if a Wyoming-based billionaire is really left-leaning. I haven't really looked into this guy. My guess would be a Wyoming billionaire probably leans to the right. But there is some validity to the idea of selling, of having Americans purchase portions of TikTok so that it could be divested among American users. I mean, that could be kind of cool. It would be a lot harder to really suppress free speech if it was the American population that owned it. But I don't know if that's realistic either.
Is about the American people, and this is about bringing TikTok to America. And I'm going to fight for that day in and day out.
Rasner says his offer is around $47.5 billion and that the Trump administration has reviewed it. But the big question, will TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance be swayed to sell?
Yeah, I don't even know if ByteDance wants to sell. They probably don't. And quite frankly, I don't think that they care because TikTok is global. I mean, here in America, we think that if they lost the American market, it would be the end for them. But TikTok is pretty much global. So I don't know how much really teeth there is in the threat of losing TikTok in the United States. Anyway, let's go back and listen to a little bit more of what David Pakman had to say about the additional ways that Trump or the administration can come after independent small creators.
Number 3, they will find someone to sue you. Maybe a Trump supporter says, I defamed them. Maybe a random troll files a frivolous lawsuit with the backing of some organization that is nebulously tied to the Trump White House. It doesn't matter if the lawsuit has no merit. It's about draining resources because defending against lawsuits, even baseless ones, is expensive. It costs money. And with the courts increasingly stacked with Trump-aligned judges, even a meritless lawsuit, you can't assume you know what the conclusion will be, what the outcome will be. Number 4, They will weaponize their base to flood my inbox with threats, try to get me swatted, make me fear for my safety. And the online harassment would be relentless. Even if law enforcement isn't participating, their inaction under the guise of we're getting a lot of reports and we can only deal with credible threats is going to send the message that I would be on my own. The progressive independent creators would be on our own. And then finally,
that is horrifying to think that the government could encourage swatting and harassment and death threats as a way to suppress free speech. What the hell kind of country have we turned into? Honestly, it's horrifying.
Investigations into funding. Will they go and start saying which advertisers are funding you? What about people who have, subscriptions or whatever the case may be? It would be chilling. It would be chilling and a devastating blow, because without the backing of the audience, we would quite literally struggle to keep the lights on. So the question becomes, what do I do?
I'm going to put a link to the rest of this video in the description of the YouTube, because it is an interesting question. What do we do to keep independent media speaking freely on the socials? But if you want to learn a little bit more about that, I think it could be a fascinating listen. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if we have free speech in America? Free speech is not only a constitutional right, it is one of the hallmarks of what makes America America. It's part of what separates a democracy from an autocracy. The ability to speak out, particularly to speak out against the people who are in charge without the threat of all of these other things that we've just mentioned happening to you. The dissemination of truth and truthful information is a critical tool to organizing and activism, and it is one of the things that we can use to help take down a dictatorship. Now I want to take a look at Tasia Smith, who is a digital social media activist, and I want to hear a little bit about what she has to say about the role of social media in social activism.
Now think about the first time you saw social justice impact social media. It could be as recent as Sonia Massey, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, or Oscar Grant. There's political power in social media, but up until the 2016 election, it wasn't that apparent. We saw a presidential election unfold right before our eyes on Twitter. We saw the rise of hashtags like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Say Her Name, all fueled and created by Black women, but we'll talk about that soon. But that power came with its disappointments. Misinformation being spread, insurrections being organized in plain sight without us realizing. Because unfortunately, January 6th was not a figment of our imagination. The term fake news was presented to us as a joke, but little did we know it would fuel a new form of trouble for us online. Funny enough, the person that coined this term stole from me. Yes, the 45th president of the United States saw a graphic I created for a client, saved it, took off our logo, and used it to fuel his followers to the polls. Because that's the power of social media. You can register over 2 million people in 1 year and still fall victim to someone stealing your work to fuel people in the wrong direction. Fact-checking is now social media 101.
And I want to take a break here for just a second to talk about fact-checking. Fact-checking is critically important. With all of the misinformation and disinformation that is out there, we cannot assume that the places that we are receiving information are always accurate unless we do our own due diligence and our fact-checking. So a couple of the places that I like to go to do some fact-checking and to make sure that the media that I'm listening to or watching is accurate. Ad Fontes, which is an app and a website that you can go to, and it will rate news sources from inaccurate to accurate and also from left-leaning to right-leaning. And so you can look on there and see where on the spectrum your preferred news media lie. And if they tend to be really low in accuracy, then I would suggest doing at least a little bit of media gathering or information gathering from the media that's closer to the center and higher in the accuracy scale. The other place that I like to go is Glenn Kessler, which is also an app and I think a website. I use the app on my phone, and it is a fact-checking site. Literally, it will go in and it will say, is this accurate? Is this not accurate? And it gives anywhere from, I think, 1 to 4 Pinocchios, depending on how inaccurate the information is. So that's also another place that you can go to make sure that the information that you're getting is accurate.
Who in here has ever believed some fake news? Now think about when you even realized it was fake news. Probably after you've already retweeted it, shared it to your Instagram story, before anyone ever stops and says, oh, that's not a real source. Because as a reminder, a TikTok video is not a real source.
Dang it. Dang it.
Let's talk about the top 3 ways you can spot some fake news online. Number 1, quite simply, spotting a fake account. Why is this news source the only one talking about this? Number 2, evaluate the content. Does this feel real? Does this feel like clickbait? Why is this headline so outrageous? Number 3, check the comments and replies. Others are quicker at evaluating content than you are. Lean on your community. Social media has helped amplify the voices to where Black women have changed the narrative for trials, elections, and much, much more. But honey, let me tell you, Black women are tired of saving this country.
I'm so sorry. It's so true. Y'all showed up. You did the work. You did the job. The rest of us failed you, and I am so sorry. I am so sorry, but also, thank you for showing up. You did it. We won't let it happen again.
91% of Black women voters supported the Democratic candidate in 2020. 91%. So tell me, have you thanked a Black woman lately?
Miss Tasia, thank you. All the Black women who showed up, thank you. We won't let it happen again. But thank you for showing up.
Have you checked in on a Black woman lately? Do you understand why we're constantly telling you the importance of using your voice on and offline? We have to keep the power of activism alive, both on and offline, just like our ancestors did.
If you have a platform, no matter how big or how small, now is the time to use the platform. It is the time to speak your truth. If ever there's a time, now is that time. Now I want to talk about what happens if we do not have the ability to speak our truth or to have free speech. And I want to take a look at, there's a documentary called Beyond Utopia that I have found on Hulu, and I think you can also get it on YouTube. And it documents a family who escaped from North Korea, and it shows and follows them in real time as they escape and then enter into South Korea. Now, there are 2 interviews that we're going to take a look at. The first interview is an interview with the family immediately following their escape, and they hadn't not yet even made it all of the way. They had just made it out of North Korea, out of China, and into I think they might have made it as far as Vietnam at this point, and they still had a little more ways to go. So I want to get the interview immediately following their escape, but then when they made it into Thailand and then into South Korea, they actually were given 7 months of reintegration, kind of a deprogramming and unconditioning, because they had no idea what was going on in the outside world. None. They didn't have access to cell phones. They didn't have access to any kind of social media or news. They were completely isolated, and they had been taught that Kim Jong-un was the son of God, that his father was God, and that he was the son of God. They had taken the Bible and had rewritten all of the stories of the Bible with Kim Jong-un and his father as the main players in this story of these gods. And they had also been taught that everybody outside was the enemy and evil and violent and murderous. They had been taught that they were living in the utopia and that everybody else was living in the dystopia, when it is, in fact, quite the opposite. What is going on in North Korea is quite dystopian. But what I want you to pay attention to is the interview, particularly with the grandma and the kids, immediately following their escape. They still were so well conditioned that they could not even speak badly about Kim Jong-un or about North Korea. And after about 7 months of deprogramming, their attitudes toward that started to change. So let's take a listen.
그저 꿈만 같아요. 꿈꾸는 것 같아요. 현실인지 아니면 여하튼 꿈만 같아요. 최근에는 교양사업 많이 한다 소리입니다. 어떻게 하나 우리 이겨내자는 거, 나라가 몇 년여가 아니면 붕해진다는 거, 이거가 이번에 수학명단은 이 교양사업이 시작된 때로부터 이 3년여간에 간 대상들만 수학명단에 들어갔으니까.
이런 데서 우리 세대도 수학명단에 들어갔다 할거나 정말 눈앞이 악한 탈출 아예 하면은 그거 차 한 대다가 그저 투시고 거기 가서 쭉 가면 그것도 뭐 낮에 뽑겠는지 밤에 뽑겠는지도 모르니까 그저 남쪽인지 북쪽인지 어느 쪽으로 가는지도 모르고 출발하고 할 때는 사람이 못 살 때입니다. 이 산속 깊은 갑산군에서 경우서가 옛날부터 삼수갑산한 게 앞에서도 추방해서 제일 사람 아직 못 살 고사니까나 못 살 고사인데 그런 데다가 그저 그 출발하는 뭐 땅이 뭐 와서 그저 짐이나 몇 개 툭툭 싣고 이불자리나 싣고 집은 거기 가서 다 희수하는 기고 거기 가서 너네 두고 안 거기다 훅 불어놓고 너네 이제부터 여기서 살라 하면 그저 끝입니다. 그저.
가는 길에 또 무슨 일이 있겠는지 혹시 잡히면 우리도 일단 잡히면 죽어야 된다는 각오를 딱 가지고 떠나는데 올 때 사인하러 갖고 떠났거든요. 탈북하자 했다는 거 알면 안 되기 때문에 자는 데다가 우리 하여튼 더 잘 살자고 버섯 뜯으러 간다고 아이들하고 이 국경 넘어서 중국에는 버섯이 많다는 거 이렇게 거짓말 치고 국경령 넘어지 뭐 할머니 넘어질까 봐 할머니를 부추기고 우리 진의 진표에도 양말이 없이 아버지 수프링을 이렇게 발사계처럼 이렇게 싸가지고 계속 이렇게 헤매고 우리 거나 닷새 만에 이렇게 막을 찾았다 소리입니다. 중국 이렇게 인삼막 같은데 그런 데를 가서 남자 혼자 사는 데 들어가서 인삼밭에 조선 아들이 조선 사람들이 이렇게 와서 덥체 많이 간단 말입니다. 할머니 있고 아들 있고 하니까 그 막에서 들여놨죠. 뭐 보이거나 하시면서.
밤에도 이렇게 말도 없이 그저 속이란 게 요만 콩알만 해가지고 그저 부스락 소리 나도 이 약간 가만히 있으면 우리 이 기차 가는 소리 가까이서 들린다. 이 기적 소리가. 그럼 여기 어디 국경 가까이 있구나. 요 여긴 데서 이 목사님 소리를 했게 오두막에 와서 사진 찍어 갔는지.
If Pastor Kim had not decided to help, was there any plan? Was there any hope?
그러면 못 삽니다. 그러면 못 삽니다.
북한이 제일 좋다고 아직도 생각하는가? 그래요.
어떻게 말하면
어떻게 말해도 이로써 엄마 생각대로 그대로 뭐 말하면 돼. 아프면 아프다 좋다면 좋으면 좋다 하고서 그거는 그거 그대로 이제 내보고 눈 가르보며 말하지 말고.
김정은 원수님께서도 이번에 이렇게 우리 진나에 정말 숱한 인민들을 먹여 살보느라고 많은 노력을 많이 합니다.
엄마 거짓말하지 말아야지. 엄마 언제 그 김정우이 준 쌀을 먹었다 그런 거짓말 하지 마라. 엄마 그대로 말하라 소리야. 언제 쌀을 먹어본 일 거짓말 하지 말고. 그다음에 김정우에 대해서 실망한 적이 있는가 말을 해.
그런 생각해 본 적이 없습니다. 난 야네만 보내고 내 구집을 그냥 혼자 죽을 때까지 살자 이렇게 결심했댔는데 야 또 보이고서 하루에도 두세 번 오라. 또 어디를 가면은 다 얼마라도 달라 이러면 난 내 나이 많기 때문에 난 벌지 못합니다. 그리고 그럴 수 없구나. 내 죽으나 사나 따라가야 되겠구나 하고서 이번에 정말 나라가 좀 잘 살면 다 모든 게 이루어질 것 같은데 정말 나라가 좀 우리 정말 김정은 스님께서 어리신 나이에 이 나라를 거느리고 정말 우리들이 많은 사람들이 정말 원수님께 땀 얼마라도 기쁨을 드리기 위해서 노력해야 되겠다는 거 결심합니다.
Even in this moment, this poor woman is feeling guilty that she didn't do enough for the man who was the dictator. And their lives were horrible. There was famine, there was disease, they had no... I don't think they had electricity. They were cooking with wood. I mean, it is bad there. And even so, in this moment, she couldn't say anything bad about him and felt guilty for having let him down.
생각할 때 그저 미국 놈이라면 그저 세상에서 제일 악하고 사람들은 정말 그저 막 죽이고 이러는 생각밖에 못 해봤습니다. 그러니까 무슨 이렇게 턱만 나무에 막 그럴 것 같은데 그게 아예 완전 반대로 생각되는 게 우리 저 딸이 지금 자기 엄마 우리 미국 가 살고 이렇게 말할 때 난 어제 저녁에도 아이가 말했습니다. 야 지금 이렇게 나오지만 이제 실제 가서 그렇게 아이 된다면 그저 우리도 조선에서 왔다고 우리를 죽이면 글쎄 앞으로는 어찌겠는지 지금 이 순간에는 이런 이렇게 쭉 맞아 앉아 보면은 정말 다 정말 인성 깊고 예 정말 친절하게 대해주고 이러는 거 볼 때 어떻게 어딘가 모르게 좀 거짓말이 있지 않는가 이런 게 생각되고.
어머니가 돌아갔을 때 지수명 미천대 속에서 혼자 살아가면서
What are her thoughts on Kim Jong-un?
김정은 스님 내 꾸람 오니다 도르마르자 세상에서 제일 훌륭하고 야
He's the greatest person in the world. And of course she would have to believe that. As a little girl, she's been conditioned since birth. Part of the reason that they were not able to say anything different than this is because of the lack of real information about what's going on in the greater world and about what's actually happening to them. When the government so fully controls what's being taught and said, this is what happens. Now let's take a look at the interview after they'd had about 7 months of deprogramming.
너무 좋아. 뭐라고 말했으면 좋을지 모르겠어요. 너무 좋아요. 프로그램만 끝나면 빨리 오죠. 집에 한번 오시오. 제일 놀란 게 이렇게 김일성 바로 알기라는 거 보면 하나같이 사람들이 놀라요.
어떤 죽을 때 내가 이제 너무 늦게 왔구나 하는 게 후회됩니다. 더 빨리 어렸을 때 더 빨리 와서 이래야 생각되는 게 다르겠는데.
그러니까 우린 그거 못 봤으니까 진짜 이렇게 될 수 있을까? 이건 진짜 이렇게 뭐가 이렇게 나오는 거 이 다 드라마 아닐까? 이렇게만 생각해요. 너무나도 그저 벌레처럼 살았어요.
이제는 옷이 먹었으니까 나 정말 전기에는 다 놓치고 있냐. 이거 저렇게 든단 말이야. 문구가 모자라서 더 표현을 못하지.
솔직히 뭐 우리가 고향을 버리고 싶어서 버린 것도 아니고 그리고 대다수 탈북자들이 지금 생계를 위해서 그리고 지금 형제, 가족, 자식까지들과 생리배를 당했잖아요. 정말 북한 정권이 아니면 이 한국까지 탈북자들이 올 이유가 없습니다. 그냥 살 수도 있는데.
That is why hanging on to our ability to speak freely is so important. It's so critical. And I encourage you to go and take a look at that documentary because it is incredibly eye-opening and horrifying. It's called Beyond Utopia. Now, I'm Snarky Positivity, which means I always end on a positive note. And I have a lot of positivity to share with you on this subject of free speech. We still have avenues of free speech right now. If you are watching this, you are receiving free speech. So not all is lost quite yet. And even as legacy media has folded under pressure, independent media is thriving. So I want to share with you a couple of the independent medias that I really, really like. That you can turn to, and hopefully you can gain some information and accurate information in these places. One of my favorites right now is Bluesky. Bluesky is like a left-leaning X or Twitter. It was created when X went to shit, and Bluesky is now left-leaning. Now, left-leaning does not necessarily mean inaccurate. So I would suggest that you still continue to do your own fact-checking and your own soul searching on the information that you get from Bluesky. But I have found it to be an incredibly useful tool to gathering real information in real time. MeidasTouch is another place that has recently surpassed Joe Rogan's podcast for most popular, and I want to talk a little bit about that. MeidasTouch was founded by three brothers, and they have now this huge network of reporters and legal analysts and commentators, and this is where I have primarily been getting my news, and I want to take a look at a story that they put out recently.
Hey everybody, so I actually have some really incredible
This
news
is one
to
of the
share with
brothers.
you. So Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC just featured MeidasTouch and the MeidasTouch podcast. It was such an incredible segment. I'm so grateful for the shout out, and I really wanted to share it with you here. Check this out.
All right, new topic, Joel, before we go. The left-leaning podcast, MeidasTouch, has just done the unthinkable, dethroned Joe Rogan to become the country's most popular podcast. Do you see this as a sign of a bigger political shift? Because even these three guys specifically, they are not your touchy-feely progressives. They're like three bros from Long Island.
Yeah.
That is so much fun to watch. So left-leaning media, especially independent media, is starting to gain some traction. But I want to say, too, that even legacy media is starting to fight back. So there's a story I want to put up for you about a pollster in Iowa who put out a poll prior to the election, I think almost like the day before the election, that stated that Kamala Harris was going to win. And this has been a fairly accurate poll for quite a few of the last presidencies. And so President Trump was really ticked that she put this poll out. And so even though he actually won Iowa, he was so petty he filed a lawsuit. So I want to take a look, and then let's see what she did about that.
It's good to see media companies and pollsters starting to stand up to Donald Trump's bullying tactics with the vexatious and frivolous lawsuits being filed by Donald Trump. In Iowa federal court this week, we saw Ann Selzer, the famous Iowa pollster, who incorrectly predicted that former Vice President Kamala Harris would win in Iowa. Donald Trump was so petty that even after he won the election in December, Donald Trump sued Ann Selzer, saying that her poll constituted an injury to him under Iowa's consumer protection statutes. He announced that he was going to file this lawsuit. He filed the lawsuit to harass and intimidate her, the way he was filing these lawsuits against all of these other media companies. A lot of the media companies, submitted. ABC tapped out and submitted, and a bunch of these other ones did as well. But now I think as Donald Trump is looking weaker and more pathetic, we're seeing media companies stand up and pollsters stand up. Ann Selzer filed an absolutely blistering response, as David Enrich puts it, to Trump's lawsuit against her and the Des Moines Register. Selzer called it a flagrant attempt to circumvent the First Amendment. I want to talk about her filing. It is great legal work, and I want to talk about the organization behind it as well.
It is so fun to watch legacy media and pollsters starting to fight back against Trump. And I think maybe even one of the lawsuits that was mentioned earlier, I think the one against Paramount, I think that they pushed back too. I'm not for sure about that, so don't quote me on that, but I think they pushed back too. Other commentators and activists and debaters that I really like, I really enjoy watching lives on TikTok, and so I'm going to list out a few of my favorite content creators who do lives on TikTok, and they're mostly commentators. They are Facts Still Matter.
Good morning and welcome to Antifa Friday. Question is, who are we calling out today? Like every day, there are so many to choose from. I've got my eye in particular on Senate Democrats after Chuck Schumer laid down like the dog he is yesterday, saying that he will vote to fund the government.
Felice, who also goes by a girl has no name.
Day, do I have some great news for you? I'm supposed to be running right now before the People's Receipts at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. But when I get good news, right, I've got to let you guys know, and I promised I was going to make more content. Trump has finally effed around and is finding out.
Danny Cook, Santana, Mr. Jones, Johnny Palmodessa, and Isaiah Martin. And Isaiah Martin has just announced his run for Congress. And I am so excited to see, because he's already built a platform. He's been a left-leaning creator for a while, and now he's running for Congress, which makes me so, so happy. And it gives me a lot of hope for the future. Other journalists and commentators that I like who are primarily on YouTube include Luke Beasley, David Pakman, Adam Cray, and Brian Tyler Cohen. Now, Brian Tyler Cohen just founded Chorus Media, and the website is wearechorus.com. Now, right-leaning media has been well coordinated for a really long time, and it's in part responsible for why Donald Trump won this last election, because Donald Trump really leaned into the right-leaning media, particularly the podcasters, the podcast bros, and other independent media creators on the right. And they were very streamlined in their messaging. Like, you could go to any right-wing media and you'd be hearing the same talking points. Now, the left-wing media has been really bad about their messaging. And it seems like we've got all these creators out there and they're kind of all talking about sort of the same things, but not exactly really. So Brian Tyler Cohen has created Chorus. And the idea of it is he's going to take 1,000 content creators, left-leaning content creators at a time, and he's going to train them, and he's going to equip them, and he's going to give them access to political leaders that they maybe wouldn't have access to otherwise, so that they can create content. And he's going to streamline the messaging. So I want to take a look a little bit at We Are Chorus, or Chorus Media, and see what he's doing over there.
I've been beating the drum about growing the progressive media ecosystem for years now. We finally got an exciting update. I'm part of a team of creators that's created Chorus Media. Chorus is a creator-led group of voices from the left coming together to scale up, drive the conversation online, and try and rebalance the massive disparity at play on the left and the right. So here's the deal. Chorus is going to support left-wing creators in a bunch of tangible ways, funding editors and researchers and bookers, helping creators who are established on one platform make sure they've got a presence on the others, and coordinating our messaging. Now, for me specifically, I'm not going to accept any funding. That money needs to go to new creators and the folks who can help them grow, but I'll be focused on message coordination. It has felt for the last decade like Republicans head into a morning meeting to get aligned on messaging. That disparity goes away now. If you'd like to support our efforts financially, that would be appreciated. You can click the link in the link tree in my bio. But otherwise, we can all play a role by supporting progressive creators on all platforms and helping us build out our infrastructure.
So that is super exciting. So moving forward, we will have left-leaning creators that are streamlined in their messaging and have access to the people they need to have access to, and the people and the resources. Now, I would love to join Chorus. I might be a little too old to join Chorus. They've kind of have been very... The website says they're looking for Gen Z creators, and I'm a couple of generations away from Gen Z, just two. However, if any of you have a line to Brian Tyler Cohen, and if he happens to be looking for a very excited, progressive, left-leaning creator, I'm just saying. All of these creators are on multiple platforms, the ones that I just listed. And the ones that I've seen primarily they're using is YouTube, TikTok, Substack, and Bluesky. If TikTok goes away, I think a lot of the live streamers are going to move over to YouTube and maybe to Twitch, but I don't really like Twitch. It's not my cup of tea. And for just straight up news, people are moving to Bluesky and to Substack. And I think you can also do some live things and some more video things on Substack, even more than you can do on Bluesky. I think a few people also use Discord. I don't really get the Discord. I don't like it. It's too complicated for me, and it's bleh. Anyway, but I mean, if that's your cup of tea, then you do you. So all of those people can be found in all of those places, and many, many more that I didn't mention here. Finally, one of the other positive things is that if you are still watching Snarky Positivity, that means that you too also are participating in the dissemination and reception of free speech, because you just got a whole mess of free speech in there. So thank you for sticking with me. I really, really do appreciate your willingness to take this journey with me. And if you like the content, please do subscribe, because I'm working to build up my subscriber base. And I will continue to put out content. And if you have information that you'd like to gather, you'd like me to gather, let me know in the comments. Thank you. I appreciate you. Okay, bye.